Hey, so here we are looking at my Mk6 GTI. And a question I get asked a lot is what I've done to it, what the mods are onto it, you know, power, yada yada yada, all the pretty typical questions that someone who's interested in the car, interested in the platform, interested in the engine is wanting to ask about it. Usually what I end up doing is I end up just sending a sort of long thread from Golf Mk6 about all the mods and stuff I've done, when I've done them, or wheel well or something like that. But that's kind of a pain in the ass to read through, and to be quite honest with you, most people need video entertainment for that purposes. So here we are. I'm just giving you kind of quick down and dirty on the things I've done. So I think since we're on the outside of the car, best place to do is start from the exterior. Now I'm going to give you sort of a list of things I've done, and that's going to be a pretty hodgepodge, mismatched order of when I've done them. So it's not going to be chronological. I'm just going to kind of tell you from exterior, you know, interior, engine, and we'll go underneath the car and take a look at that. But yeah, so starting off, sort of up at the front. Obviously changed the grille. Obviously the first thing I guess I should say is that the whole thing's vinyl wrapped. The original color of the car is black, and it'll be returning to black very soon before I possibly get it resprayed. But for now the vinyl wrap's on. I'm out in the desert, so it's difficult for me to keep it clean and then keep the spray off of it. You can see I have Mk GT7 wheels on it. These are 21 pounds for the 18x8, if I'm not mistaken, and they're wrapped in 225 40x18 Michelin Pilot Super Sports, sort of the flavor of the day. So accuse me of drinking the Kool-Aid. I've got Stop Tech big brake kit up front. This ST41 single piece rotor, not the dual piece. I mistakenly didn't want to shell out the money for that. Now I should have, but whatever. In the rear, I've got Stop Tech rotors with Stop Tech pads as well. Stock caliper, stainless steel lines, front and back. Obviously mentioned the vinyl wrap. Going up to the front, probably the most noticeable thing is the carbon fiber hood on it with functional hood pins that I installed. One thing I noticed when I installed this carbon fiber hood's from ECS Tuning, and when you're driving down the highway, you see a lot of this, and it's quite alarming. Now the corner pieces where it's mounted into, these are quite stout and stiff. You don't see those flex or move at all, but you do see that centerpiece move. And when you're doing 90 miles an hour down the road and you see the hood just doing this, it's disconcerting. So I went with hood pins. They're functional hood pins from Sparco. They do bolt into the shroud. We'll show in a second, but for now we'll leave them unlatched so we can pop the hood. Coming in the front, ECS splitter, really front lip, not quite splitter. Something I get commented on a lot are these SRS Tech fog light delete kits. These are from Germany. They don't make them anymore. You can also see they're not exactly the nicest fit, but they are functional airflow, air vents into the engine, pull a little more engine air out, excuse me. However, I do think that these are also aerodynamically a little less efficient than the OEM setup. That is to say, if you're going really high speeds, say 120 or 130 miles an hour straights, you're probably getting better aerodynamic efficiency from the OEM setup, because these end up pushing air, flowing around here, probably messing up the low pressure and the high pressure differential that is instrumental in a lot of the downforce. That's the little amount of downforce that these cars may produce. Either way, they're really good though for helping to cool off the intercooler piping. You won't be able to see it quite through here, but on this one, the hot side of the intercooler, or the cool side of the intercooler, sorry, is right through here. So this is flowing quite a bit of air right through that location and getting a really good airflow back there to help cool down the engine, cool down everything else. In fact, it's so good that before I had these, oftentimes in the desert, I would drive around, just daily driving, no big deal, park the car, and the engine fans would still run to cool down the engine. However, lately I've been noticing, since I installed those a year and a half ago, I've not had that issue, even 115 degree heat, so that should be saying something. Coming around to the back for exterior purposes, Euro tail lights, APR, rear windshield wiper delete. The windshield wiper motor, I only deleted this because the windshield wiper motor weighs about 4 pounds, and as you'll come to discover for this car, I'm quasi-obsessed with weight savings. So some stickers from when I was in Wörthersee, obviously in Austria, and then some stickers, the tracks I've done, Nürburgring, Nordschleife, Pomona, and Buttonwillow. Each one of these adds about 5 to 10 horsepower, so I make sure to keep them on at all times to get maximum pull. Other than that, that should conclude for the exterior. Now we'll jump in the interior and take a look. Here we are in the interior. Kind of go over some things that I've kept in, I think some things I've changed, so on and so forth. First thing I will tell you is this is my daily driver. You can see on the odometer there, 72,087 miles. I recently just took this up to Oregon and back, which is about an 1,800 mile trip from where I am in Southern California. The thing's just a really amazingly reliable car for all the things I've done to it. So going first off, boost gauge on the left, it's a New South boost gauge. That's been in there for probably, hell, 3.5 years or 4 years or so. Never any issues with it, just a really solid piece. Nothing different with steering wheel, nothing different here. Obviously, I do have Black Forest Industries shift knob, which was a mistake to buy in the summer with the black metal, but it teaches me to get rid of the habit of resting my hand on the stick shifts, which is something in a stick shift car you should never do. But either way, really nice piece, has a great throw to it, great feel to it, and it's matched up with a VWR short shift kit that I bought probably 5 years ago when I first bought the car. And it has very just simple pull, simple throw to it. I just really enjoy it. Moving along, do have Tanner Faust came and wonderfully signed my car. Thank you, Tanner. He's a badass driver. Maybe I'll get some horsepower of that too. I don't know. Moving to the back. Oh, before we go to the back, I guess I should talk about this thing. So I do have a Bride Vios 3 lightweight bucket seat, fixed seat, and this is my daily. This is what I drive in. They will advertise this for 34-inch waist. You can see it's not going to fit 34. I'm a 31-inch waist, and it is snug for me. Now it's linked up to a Sparco side mount with a planted bottom bracket. I did have to do some modifications to the bottom. I'm not sure if this will show up on camera, but basically the OEM seatbelt still runs, and it's bolted straight into the chassis now instead of into the bracket. So when you pull the bracket off for the OEM mount, you'll see that the seatbelt kind of slides into the OEM mount, but I have it bolted straight to the chassis now instead. I still use the OEM seatbelt because there's a lot of dialogue and talk about 4-point, 5-point harnesses, submarining, so on and so forth, and I decided just to avoid that and say, you know what, Volvo had it right all along, and go with the 3-point. The seat's fantastic. I've done probably 6,000 miles in it. The longest trips, I've done 12-hour days in it at 760 miles in one day. That was driving from here to Oregon and from Oregon to here back. One day, 760 miles in this seat. And it got hot, yeah, because it's in the most of it, the driving was in the desert, and it's about 110 degrees out here. But I'm telling you, it was an awesome investment. This weighs 19.5 pounds altogether, brackets and all. The OEM seat weighs 48 pounds, I think. I measured it at one point, can't remember now. So great investment. I mean, just massively noticeable on the track. You can really throw the car around and feel more secure and planted into the car with these things. Moving into the back, excuse my sunscreen. Moving into the back, you can see I have the GTI Euro Creations rear seat delete. The rear seats in these cars weigh about 80 pounds, yeah, I never bring anybody in the back seat. You'll also notice my car's a two-door, so it's just not as practical. When people want to ride in the back, I'm like, hey, I can take one person. It's great because now I get out of the car rides of chauffeuring people around, which usually means I don't have the DD, which is even better. You can see also I have the Eurobrace XB put in there. I put that in about 2 years ago. That will be probably one of the most noticeable modifications to change the overall dynamic and how the car handles, performs, moves around a track. I mean, when I first put that in, I was legitimately blown away at just the difference it makes and how the car feels when you throw it into a turn. That should conclude basically back here, nothing else different. So let's check out the engine bay. All right, so here we are in the engine bay, and from first glance, it probably looks pretty much normal. The trained eye will see a couple things that are out of place. Obviously, the untrained eye will definitely notice the air intake is quite a bit larger than normal, and obviously not normal. That's an integrated engineering intake, and 3-inch piping all the way down to a 2.25 step down into the turbo. What you won't be able to tell is that the turbo is a KO4 turbo, Borg-Warner, technically Borg-Warner, but also redesigned by APR. So it's an APR turbo, but really it's a Borg-Warner KO4, if that makes sense. Anyway, pulling off the intake, sorry, not the intake, but the engine cover. To get into some other things, you'll see I run the stock PCV still. Haven't had any issues with that, so I don't see a need to replace it. Stock high pressure fuel pump, Audi R8 coils with NGK BRK 8 EIX, spark plugs gapped at 0.022. Those are a pain in the ass. Realistically, this tune does run rather lean overall, and what I've learned is that you just change plugs out quite frequently, and really there's a lot of hope for the best. But I've been running this way for about 45,000 miles or so on KO4 power, so in this tune, so no great drama there. Let's see. One big thing that most people notice is these lines that are sort of running all over the place. So boost tap line into the intake manifold that runs to a T. This one here runs to the boost gauge up front. Again, I've had that thing on for 4 years, 3-4 years, something like that, and no issues, no problems with that. That boost gauge still keeps going, so mad props to New South. A lot of times those analog boost gauges will get oil or residue in there or something on those lines, and it'll funk up the readings, but really the readings match up with my ECU logs. The T here runs to back in through the dash, or into the back into the cabin to my AEM water methanol boost controller. Water methanol boost regulator. That's located right there. So sorry for not showing this a little bit before, but basically this guy gets its boost signal from the intake manifold, and then obviously is tapped in electrically, so that it's going to set my water methanol injection at 5 psi. It's going to start spraying at about 13 psi. It's going to max out its spray, and it's going to build its own matrix on how that works. And once we go under the car, I'll show you where that's all set up. But so that's what that line runs to. I do need to do a little bit better job of securing it. You can see some little drift stitching right there, but I need to find a better way to secure it down below the windshield wiper fluid reservoir, which would be a good time to tell you that this is not holding windshield wiper fluid but boost juice. And you can see the pink coloring, 50% methanol, 50% water. So my line is tapped into my windshield wiper reservoir, and it's done that because I can't use the windshield wiper reservoir. Why can't I use it? Because I changed this hood. So this is the carbon fiber hood, obviously, I had to put in there. I have this a great fitment, great setup overall. It's 20 pounds lighter than the OEM hood. I mean, just really nice. Problem is, it didn't come with any of its own drilling. So you can see my marks that I made here. These are for the hood pins. This one was originally where I was going to put the hood pins. Now, normally, you have your windshield wiper sprayers running through here and shooting out here and here, but this is not drilled for it, and because it's not drilled for it and I didn't feel like dicking with it, I just decided not to do it until delete those altogether. After all, I don't have a rear windshield wiper. I live in the desert, so whatever, screw it. You can see the hood pins are mounted here. This was the best place that I could see to mount them. I tried doing it here on the actual support brace on the metal, and you can see over here I tried drilling it, but this is also where your cable, your hardline cable runs for your hood latch. You can also see that this runs the OEM hood latch. So I didn't really want to get too crazy with putting a mounting bracket here at risk of damaging this. Sorry if I'm not focusing well on it, but this is what I'm talking about right here underneath it. So I kind of drilled the hell out of this and then, you know, bailed on it. More stuff in the engine bay. You might not be able to see, but this gold shifter linkage, that's the VWR shifter linkage. This is my new speed throttle body piping. That's wider than the OEM pipes. And we'll save the turbo outlet pipe until you can see it from underneath the car. This looks like an OEM mount, but it's really a 034 Motorsports street density mount, about 60% stiffer than the OEM mount, and its sister is over here on the transmission, which is underneath the battery. Now, the battery is another thing that I've messed with at the request of a lot of not really requests, but suggestions of a lot of people who are running some really good lightweight batteries. I bought a Braille 11.5 pound battery and mounted it into the OEM bracket. So the significance of this is the OEM battery weighs about 39 pounds. The battery I was running at the time weighs 33 pounds. This weighs 11 pounds exactly. Now it says 11 pounds, 11.5, but when I weighed it, it was 11 pounds exactly. I haven't had any issues with this. Put about 4,000 miles in the car with this, AC, radio, Bluetooth. I did, again, those 2 trips up to Oregon and back. Did that, no problems with it. It's in this mount here that's gone through the bottom of the regular battery tray and is mounted that way, and it is solid as rock in there. But the best part is it's pretty stealth. So when you look at the whole point of it was when you look at this car and you open the hood, you can't tell that anything's really done to it. You can't tell that it's really water methanol injected. You can't tell it's big turbo. You can't tell there's a lot of piping done for the intercoolers. You can't tell that it's weight savings, with the exception of the obvious carbon fiber hood. It looks basically stock, and realistically it sort of kind of is. The block's still the same, the intake manifold's still the same, the upper part of the motor is all the same, cams, everything's the same. It does have the upgraded timing tensioner, but it had the upgraded timing tensioner, which is a huge problem for these cars, and it had that from the factory. This actually was one of the earliest ones that probably came with that upgraded tensioner, since this was an October of 2011 build date, and they didn't start mainlining those on a lot of these engine platforms until 2012 build dates. So I lucked out quite a bit on that one. So with that being said, let's get under the car and take a look at that. Alright, so here we are underneath the car. I'm going to do the best I can to get shots here, but of course the spacing is pretty tight. So yeah, we'll just kind of see how it goes. Kind of starting forward to back. First thing is, this is that same throttle body pipe I was telling you. I didn't mention it earlier, but I have a SPM intercooler, and at the time it was put out, it was one of the largest intercoolers you could get, and I had heat soaking issues when I was in Germany, so I picked it up. Now, one thing I will say about it, if you look up carefully, I'm not sure if you can see it or not, right here I have about, well, now it's about an 1/8 of an inch maybe of clearance between the throttle body pipe and the fan here. I recently tucked it in a little bit better, so before it was about a 1/16 of an inch, just barely there. So it does push the whole core support, this whole entity, the intercooler being underneath here, radiator, and then AC condenser. It pushes it all closer to the engine. But it does do a fantastic job of actually cooling the car down. Added to that is, this is where my water methanol injection is being sprayed into. Currently, it's a 250 cc nozzle, spraying in way below the throttle body pipe, which is all the way up there. So it has a good time to atomize and not mess up any of the internals there, or really the electric parts of the throttle body assembly. That line comes down through here, and you can see barely here, maybe, I'm not sure if you can see that or not. This is my AEM pump mounted to the front part of the chassis. It's actually mounted to the aft part, well, the front part of the chassis where the crash beam is. Coming down this way, you can see my SPM hoses to my bigger and beefier throttle body pipe. This is what's commonly on the OEM cars called a pancake pipe. It's very thin. This widens it up, and then coming all the way up to my my KO4 turbo. I'm not sure if you can see if it's going to catch on camera. I don't unfortunately have the light with me, but there is a little bit of oil that comes off of that. You can see on my finger. That is a pretty common problem with these necks here, is getting that on there tight and secure enough. You know, if there's oil, there's air. So it's something I've still been troubleshooting. I still pull the appropriate boost, so if the leak that's there is super small and unnoticeable. But again, if there's oil, there's air. So if I can tighten that up a little bit more and find a way to secure it tighter, more power for me. You can't probably see it, but up here is, see if I can get around here. This right here, a DV plus diverter valve off the turbo. Obviously I mentioned the turbo itself is a KO4, APR KO4 Borg Warner. Coming down here, I do have a Fumoto drain valve. Makes oil changes hella easy. Pull that little tab, oil comes out, close the little tab, fill oil. Can't get much easier than that. You'll see here, this is my KMD tuning front subframe bar. Now they recently redesigned this to a better design, because this is obviously just going from one part of the subframe to the other part of the subframe, stiffening this up a little bit more, which isn't really what needs to be stiffened. It does do a little bit for steering inputs and rigidity, but really the new one they designed, I think, goes into the lower control arm somewhere in this assembly here, and comes across the same way. So possibly looking at switching over to that. The anti-sway sway bar right here is still the OEM. Now I did change the back one out, but the front one, I had read places where if you stiffen the front too much in a hatchback like this, you're really just getting back whatever understeer properties that you've gotten away from by stiffening the ass end of the car up a little bit more. Now I'm not an engineer, I don't know if that's true, but it certainly feels accurate. The more I stiffen up the rear, the better and better the car feels, the more it wants to kick out when I want to. And again, that's a really weird thing for front wheel drive, so I'm kind of just going with it. This is my 034 Motorsports spherical what they call dog bone mount. Connects the actual transmission engine assembly to the subframe, and it's married up. Excuse me. It's married up to an HPA 75 diameter puck, and then going back even further, I'm not going to just crawl too much underneath there. You have an APR downpipe with a 42 draft design spacer, 90-degree spacer for emission purposes. And then you can see right behind that there's of course the big giant red Unibrace UB. Really great for stiffening up the mid rigidity of a car. Most noticeable, like you can feel when you go over bumps, the car feels like one solid piece instead of, you know, a big flexy box on wheels. We'll take a second to kind of see what we can see in the back. Just give me one moment. As we start making our way to the back, one thing I will say is suspension, something I didn't touch on. Now, I personally do not run a coilover setup, which blows everybody's tits off, really, but what I run is an H&R Super Sport spring matched with Coney Yellow shocks and struts. This was a really inexpensive way to get adjustable dampening and the ride height that I preferred. I personally highly recommend this to anybody looking for suspension upgrades to a car, or to a GTI rather, that isn't crazy about dropping $1,500 on a really good set of coils, or $2,000 on a really good set of coils. They want track performance. They want to go out, people do adjustable dampening, don't really care much about ride height like me. This is a great way to get fixed ride height, is finding the right spring and matching it to the dampeners. And then if you can, get it corner balanced, but if not, set the dampeners to what you prefer. I have full stiffness rear, about 3/4 stiffness up front. And it changes kind of. I can still mess with it, play with it. I've yet to get this corner balance, which is probably my next step, particularly because the weight distribution of the car is so off, being that the back end is so light, the front end is so heavy. But that being said, this is the suspension I run. They have TTRS solid mounts for the towers, but I just want to kind of briefly go over that part. Alright, so I'm going to do my best to kind of get underneath this car without jacking again, because I'm lazy. So now I have, you saw it at the front, you probably can't see because the light's coming in that way. That was the APR downpipe. Now I have it married to a 42 draft design aluminized steel catback exhaust. Now this poor thing has been through hell of 2 winters in Germany without being stainless. So you can definitely see, if I get in the right place here, where, as you can see, that coupler here, definitely a little worse for wear, particularly on the aft portion of where the tires kick up salt and stuff, just really ate up. So this is going to be getting replaced relatively soon,
But yeah, you know, if you're going with an exhaust, just go with the right thing. Get stainless. Don't mess around with this aluminite steel stuff. I will say one advantage to this is it is much lighter. I mean, it is crazy light. So yeah, trade-offs. You know, if you're in a SoCal environment, which I'm at right now, maybe not a bad idea. But if you're going to be going to some place like Germany or Minnesota or some craziness, yeah, your exhaust is going to last but like 2 years. So definitely hook that up. Let's move around to the back of the car and see if we can get underneath to see the last few components that we'll go over, just to kind of round this whole thing out. Let's see. It's a little bit further up. Right there you can see my KMD tuning, or you should be able to see my KMD tuning rear subframe brace. Now it's right above it, and I'm not really able to see it myself from this position. Oh, there it is. Is my H&R 22 millimeter rear sway bar. That was an old mod on the car. I put that on probably right off the bat, and really just a fantastic mod for 200 bucks. Easy to do, easy to put on, and really stiffens up the ass end, which is something these cars desperately need, being front-wheel drive hatchbacks that notoriously understeer. So highly recommend that. The brace in the back of the 4 major braces I have, this is probably the second most important one behind the XB, which was in the cabin of the car. But this one definitely changes the feel of the ass end a little bit. One thing that will be coming soon probably for it are new lower control arms, front and rear, and bushings. I want to get some lightweight lower control arms, so as to get the weight down just a little bit more than it already is. All right, so the next thing and last thing we'll talk about are some numbers. Like what all does this add up to being? So the first thing I should say is that the car weighs totally, and I weigh it frequently. Empty fuel weight would be about 2,700 pounds, 2,780 pounds. Quarter tank fuel weight, 2,800 pounds. And with me in it, 2,960. So I'm kind of a skinny kid, so that helps out for weight savings. So what that means is the whole car itself weighs, with me in it, weighs about 150 to 200 pounds under stock, and that depends on what, of course, configuration you have. Now I have a 2-door with no sunroof, so that means I save off the gate about 80 to 90 pounds over an OEM car, or over a 4-door sunroof, like Autobahn package car. Cloth interior seats are a little bit lighter than an Autobahn package, and of course I'm 6MT, which is about manual transmission, which I think is about 30 pounds lighter than a DSG. So I get some inherent savings there that really help me out. So the whole car with me, and it weighs roughly 2,960 on a quarter tank of gas. Now right now it's running a 91 octane tune because of the fuel the fuel that's available. I'm currently testing around to see if I can spray enough meth to get it to run 93 safely, but I seriously doubt I'm going to be running that way. It seems like a lot to push for a car that's in a hot environment and running a lean, well, basically end up being an even leaner mixture. So to transfer to the US, you have to use that little thing, but they're very close. But this is something I think 331, if I'm not mistaken, power to the wheels. Bottom line is the car makes great power, pretty even power. It plateaus, it does hold breath kind of for a smaller turbo, but does taper off a little bit in the back end. So what that all comes up to is that the car makes pretty damn decent power to weight ratio, something close to full bolt-on 5.0s, ZL1s, early gen ZL1s, Corvette C6s, things like that, if I'm not mistaken. All that being said, that's sort of the rundown of my car. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I just kind of made this video to get people an idea. There's a lot of videos about, hey, top 5 mods, top 10 mods to do to your Mark 6. I can tell you firsthand that there's a lot of mods that I have taken off of this car, a lot of mods that I would do again, and if I could do it all over again, I will tell you firsthand there's a lot of things I would have done differently. Namely, I would have gone brake, suspension, weight, way prior to anything engine. Tires first. Brakes, suspension, weight reduction before I even touched the engine, before I even got into a stage 1 tune. I have a lot of comments on that. If you guys are interested, let me know. I'll make another video. But bottom line, this is my car, named Radical Edward. For those of you guys who are aware, that's who this is. Look up Radical Edward. If you don't watch Cowboy Bebop, you should have. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. I know it's kind of a long video. It's weird, but appreciate it. Deuces.